Cool. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Campus Research Computing Consortium Data Track call. So a little more about the Campus Research Computing Consortium, or CARC for short. We're a professional organization for people in the research, computing, and data field, whether that be researchers, or research support folks. We have a few kind of wings of the consortium. There's the People Network, which this call is a part of. It's a kind of year-round virtual conference with calls every month. And then there's also working groups and interest groups that are designed to create some deliverables about issues in the field. And if you're interested in learning more, our website is carc.org. We have an email list you can sign up for there, as well as a Slack workspace. And if you would like to contribute to the call's notes document, that is in the chat. We also ask that you sign in there. If you could, that helps us keep track of just attendance and what types of people are attending our calls. Cool, so that's enough about CARC. So the rest of today is just meant to be a kind of conversation about some data-related things that went on at the PEARC conference, the Practice and Experience in Advanced Research Computing. So let's see a show of maybe raised hands or yeses and nos. Who got to go to PEARC? Oh my gosh. Sorry, so I got COVID halfway through PEARC and my brain's still a little scrambled from it, so. Which means I only got to go to half of PEARC, which was pretty sad. But we have a few people that were at PEARC. So lots of people who were not. All right, so I think, why don't we start from the beginning of the week. So CARC actually put on a co-located event the day before the conference started. And there was a workshop on data governance, which turned out to be quite interesting. Kind of our biggest takeaway from that is, like, data governance and data management are very intertwined, and kind of the lines between them get blurred, but it's a really big topic if you don't at least attempt to kind of separate it out into smaller chunks. So that was kind of a big lesson I learned there. I do see a few more people who were at that, if they would like to contribute.
Are you asking those of us who were at Nexus Day to talk about Nexus Day?
No, specifically the data governance. But if you want to talk about your side of Nexus Day, that would also work.
Happy to do that after the governance section, but since I was running the people section, I don't have much that I could say about the governance section.
Yeah. Yeah, and I do have all the data from the data governance section. I just still need to like transcribe it and prettify it and summarize it. So that should be coming soon, right? I've got it all right here. I just need to transcribe it. Haven't had a chance to do that.
I love that. It's old school.
Yep, yep. Yeah, I find that like people in person tend to like physical writing, like on a board or paper. So I always make sure people do that. One thing for the attendees, I had a BOF later in the week about kind of storage strategies and data management technologies. That kind of was a great follow-on to the workshop. And I've also got data from that I'm going to include, but again, I haven't had a chance to go through that one.
Deb, I have a question for you about the data governance workshop. I wasn't able to be at PEARC, but how was the split in interest between data management and data government or governance? Did people tend to go down different tracks, or did like how did the organization all work out?
It ended up being kind of a split down the middle. Kind of what we did was, since it was such a broad topic, we kind of put two axes on the room. One was data governance to data management, and then one was mature center to emerging center, and people kind of self-aggregated based on what they want to talk about. And we had one table that was like all the way on the data governance side, but it was the largest table by far. And then we had some other tables kind of going along the center axis for more data management type things. If you're really curious, I also recorded what the layout ended up being.
Yeah, I'm also interested in what themes emerged from the discussions. I know you haven't really compiled the data yet, but are there any top of mind themes that came out that that you can share with us?
Deb, we could probably show, Lauren, we probably have access to the slides we did from the regroup. We could show the slide that the data governance, that group, what we produced is our summary.
Yeah, Betsy, I
Is it
already
a-
linked the presentation in the notes. I'll add it to the chat.
Thank you.
And the wrap-up slides will be at the end of that presentation that I just linked.
Deb, I don't know if you want to talk to the slides since you,
Yes, as soon as
Okay.
I find the ones that are.
okay.
Yeah, I think these were the ones. It starts at slide 22 for everyone following along. Yeah, so this was kind of, there's an obvious need for community-oriented resources, both in regards to data governance and data management. So kind of the big takeaway there is there's plenty of places that we could start collecting these resources. But kind of the biggest issue is that everyone wants this data, but no one wants to collect the data or provide the data. So how do you get over that? So for example, if someone just wants to send out a survey to start collecting data, a lot of people don't actually answer the survey, even though everyone wants this data, which is quite a big thing to puzzle over. And also something that I found really interesting is that a lot of people in that room had not heard of RDAP, the Research Data and Access Preservation Association, which is very much kind of a complementary professional group to PEARC that's more on the informational side of data management. So that's like your research data management teams, your library teams tend to be over there. Definitely, that's kind of what I'm hoping the data track can provide, is that nice meeting ground between the more sysadmin sides and the more data sides, bring them together.
Hey Deb, was there a poll of any sort to get sort of backgrounds or domains of folks that were in attendance in the audience? Actually, Betsy, you were there too, so sorry about that. The two of you.
Cool. So kind of we used the kind of placement in the room as most of our kind of quote unquote demographic data, if you want to call it that.
So Bob, to answer your question, we can take who attended the workshop and cross it with who registered, and we have a pretty good idea who the demographics are. And it ranged from small institution to large institution, from different types of positions within the organization. There was a fair amount of full practitioners there that actually like people that deal with data, librarians, system admin, all the way up to executives. But we can, one interesting thing is part of our follow-up or the summary, I actually plan on doing a demographic slide talking about who was there and how they participated.
Yeah, I'm just curious if most people hadn't heard of RDAP, is then your audience mostly not librarian or information science related personnel?
Yeah, most of them were associated with some sort of advanced computing or central IT for sure.
Yeah.
Which is good. That means we're bringing in a whole new demographics of people that can contribute, including myself. I want to put myself in that category.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
that's one kind of piece of feedback. And then technical tools was a big conversation. For one thing, we talked about how institutional culture can impact that a lot. Like, for example, some institutions are very much like, the researchers are the ones who are doing the work. They need to provide money for all their stuff. It's like, we're not gonna just subsidize any of that. And other institutions are very much like, this is ours, not yours. You need to follow our protections. So there's kind of like a lot of cultural things that kind of play into this. But then there's also kind of the back to the emerging versus mature center, or also like how many resources you have really kind of makes it look different what type of tools would be best for you. And so any sort of data or resource we collect would have to consider that, maybe just have like a couple different tiers or something. So that was another takeaway. And then our last takeaway is all about like people, process, and governance. So a lot of it was just around like, how do you get institutional buy-in for all this? How do you get them to care about things and provide money or provide people? And just like what are priorities? What are policies? Are there policies that already exist that you need to work within? Or do you have to create your own policies? Just a lot of like administrative stuff goes into this.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Was there any discussion of, I'm thinking about the storage focused discussion. Was there any discussion around NSPM 33 implementations and how that affects the ability of institutions to, I guess, approve different storage platforms? Maybe that's
I
too.
don't think anyone brought that one up specifically, but one of our tables did concentrate more on regulated data types.
This seems like a good topic for a future
Mhm.
discussion. We should probably add that to the notes. And I'll actually make that a note in the follow-up discussions that Patrick and I are putting together. That seems like a really good thing to touch on.
Yep.
It's
Oh, and this would be a great time to plug kind of it was called a discussion group at one point. I don't know what exactly it is anymore. But the data facing track does have a specific email list to talk about storage related things like this. So if anyone is interested in just being a part of that listserv, you could put your Google account in the chat and I can add it. But yeah, it's the intention is just like when people have these like big questions or big needs to solve a problem, they can just kind of self-organize using this list.
And the data facing track list should be, I think, accessible in the same way. So anybody that's a member of the data facing track list, or even really the people network list, those are email lists where leveraging collective input from this community is one way to kind of leverage the community through the list. And then the other thing I would say is that if there's room for more discussion and certainly involving folks beyond those who showed up to RCD Nexus Day, that this track is a great place to have some dedicated discussions around some of these topics that seem interesting to all of you here. Or I should say all of us.
Deb, I can go ahead and capture these emails and put them in our notes so that we can add them to the data storage discussion.
I'm doing it right now.
Okay.
But yeah, I kind of think the first thing we could tackle is just trying to collect some of this data. And the nice thing about PEARC using Google Groups is that you have an archive of all the conversations. So we could at least like just have email threads and create those. So we have them. So that's at least some data we can capture there. And then as people have time or desire, they can go curate it. It's like, that's my low effort idea for starting to collect some of this data.
Deb, there are a number of folks who are putting their email addresses in the chat. Can you restate what you were asking if they'd like to join? It's a discussion group, which really, we should talk about this maybe later, Deb, but our interest groups are discussion groups. And I imagine that for something that's about storage in particular, you probably would be open to having folks who maybe come at it from also a systems background.
Yeah, that's the idea of this
Okay.
list in particular. It's not an interest group.
But it
I
sounds like it operates as a discussion group, which
Yeah.
in PEARC, basically that's our interest groups and our tracks, if that makes
Right.
sense.
Yeah, it's kind of because it is a mix of like data side and system side. It's kind of like a crossover email list between systems track and data facing track.
Mhm.
How it's working out. So
Yeah, there's also the research cybersecurity track that, you know, we don't have to let the facings dictate everything that brings folks together. There would probably be some researcher facing folks who'd be interested in talking about data storage, and certainly some strategy and policy facing type folks, or anybody who wears multiple hats. So I've created a spot in the notes where I'm capturing these email addresses.
okay. Cool. So some of the emails in chat are already on the list, but if they weren't before, they are now. Cool. So I should probably mention what the actual email for it is. Cool. Yeah, and it's really meant to be like this self-organizing thing. Like if you have an idea for a meetup or something, just go for it.
And Deb, another thing we can do that you and I can work on is giving this the visibility that you're interested in on the CARC website so that others can sign up to join, because they could ask to join directly the Google group.
Yep.
So this is a bit of a different direction question, but were there other highlights from the rest of the week during PEARC 24? Other presentations that were data focused that really caught anyone's attention?
I'm interested in that question too, because I did not get to see a lot of it, which is very sad.
So anybody could raise their hand, sessions that you attended or are aware of that had some significant data interest, even if they weren't data facing centric.
I would also be interested because I didn't see a lot of data centric kind of discussions pop out to me naturally. Because I actually tried to be a little deliberate to look for sessions that covered some of those topics, and I didn't really see anything that stuck out as, yeah, this is a great topic or great presentation. I plan on digging through the proceedings, so maybe if I attend a future one, I'll try to help see if I can find some papers or presentations.
The PEARC website says that what I just threw in the chat, it's also in the document, the notes document, that should give you a link to a search that filters on the word data showing up in the schedule. And there are several that I see there that folks may be interested in reading abstracts for. For example, there's one on scaling instrument science in the fair age.
Yes, I think that one was a workshop. And I was disappointed because it switched times, so I couldn't go to it.
I see.
Yeah, and anything Globus related is good.
What I saw from the Globus one, it was talking more about features and roadmap and kind of things, not necessarily what they're seeing in trends of data that are being moved. But if someone else went to that workshop, because I stayed for a little bit, but it seemed more like a feature parity and feature roadmap, not a here's the trends we're seeing with the data that's moving, the types of data that data life cycle, I guess. If anyone else attended that, I'd be interested in hearing feedback on that one.
We might ask, I think it's Boss and some of the Globus folks to talk about that next year, because I'm sure many people would be very interested in that.
Yeah, I agree. Because they're at the heart of the wonkiness of the data movement especially between universities.
Yeah, well, they're branching out into a lot more than just data movement, which is why even like new features are very interesting for Globus, in my opinion, because they have uh I don't think it's very new, but they have I don't know what you want to call it, module called Globus Search, which is all about metadata and cataloging.
Mm-hmm. And they also have their high availability or their secured storage movement that might be of interest to people.
Noted. There were a few different sessions that talked about AI approaches for big data computing, analytics, etc. I can speak briefly to one thing that actually has data in the title. So it's data in flight, delivering data with the Pelican platform. This was an afternoon workshop on Monday. And while I was not there, I was at the annual meeting for throughput computing, which is hosted by the folks who presented the Pelican platform in this particular workshop. So I heard a bit about it. And basically, for those of you who are familiar with the OSG, formerly Open Science Grid, they have for a number of years now been operating a international, really, but nationally focused data, they call it the Open Science Data Federation. So it's federated data where like different sites around the country with their own data storage can join portions of that data storage and only selected namespace into the federation and make that data available for long-range collaboration and access, not just across OSG computing systems, but others that are connected to it. But anyway, the Pelican software is what they've now named the software that operates the Open Science Data Federation. So there's one Open Science Data Federation today, but the idea is that in the future, where needed, different countries, different large research collaborations could operate their own Open Science Data Federation.
Ooh, that's cool.
Yeah, but at the moment, they're sort of like branding the software and the ways that users interface with calls to access data in the Federation. That software is now called Pelican. And so that training was also about how to use Pelican as a user.
So that was a workshop, you said?
Yes, it was a workshop on Monday afternoon. I think it was probably more informative than any hands-on like a tutorial would be, but yeah, so there's one Open Science Data Federation, but by implementing Pelican, other entities could have a not so open data federation or their own second if they really thought they needed to.
Yeah. That'd be interesting. Maybe we could add Pelican as a topic sometime. I'd be interested to hear more about that. In
Yeah.
general,
And-
I'd be real interested to hear about all these different kind of quote unquote middlewares for storage and data management. We have Starfish, and I
Yeah.
know Starfish is pretty popular. There's also something called MediaFlux.
Data dynamics is also another one. That's a great topic, Deb, because I think that you'll see these vendors are starting to differentiate themselves in how they approach the data. So data dynamics looks at it more from role-based, where Starfish is more row level. And so depending on what problem you're trying to solve, I think those products would be interesting to figure out how you're doing the governance around that with those products.
Yeah. And just like talking to the employees from those companies is a lot different in my experience too. Like they talk more like librarians than system administrators.
Nothing wrong with system administrators, please.
No, it's just they have different priorities is all
Yeah.
I mean.
No, I was just giving a hard time.
Yes. System administrators make the world go round. So
I'm scanning the schedule for other databasing stuff, but anybody else should raise their hand to talk about something.
It looks like Bob has three
with data
different ones.
implications.
Bob, did you want to jump in and talk about the ones you saw?
Yeah, if anybody's interested, I could briefly. I attended the two tutorials or workshops on Monday, neither of which I had planned to attend, and did not disappoint. For those who are more on the sort of RC center and analysis side, data science side, the first one was rather interesting for me. I've been trying to get Spark and Dask going at Harvard Business School, and just run into a lot of problems trying to do it on our HPC system. So the group that presented is out of Ohio State, and I think it's not OSC, but Ohio State. And it was rather interesting to see what you are able to do in terms of the scale of the work that's being done. So even folks that are working with, I mean, I'm sure they're scaling it towards petabyte, but we have challenges working with just multiple terabytes of data, especially for individual users. So trying to implement some of the tooling that they have could be advantageous. I have to say I was a little disappointed. It's a tutorial. I was expecting more hands-on, and they just had like literally canned run this command, run this command, run this command, and it wasn't as thorough as I'd expected, but that's fine. But their training deck is really extensive, so it's pretty amazing. The other one was also spoke to for those who are working with large amounts of data around AI ML work. Unless you're a super trained AI ML data scientist, you always have questions about how many cores, how many GPUs, what about performance, what the different algorithms. And the second workshop highlighted a number of these topics. It was incredibly informative, and certainly made less opaque a lot of the different approaches that those who are more experienced in the AI ML world would as sort of routine. So I just thought it was pretty helpful.
Yeah. Ooh, that kind of gives me an idea, Bob. Maybe we should sponsor like a hackathon type thing sometime. Be like, okay, let's get some people from Globus and have people just try to build things in Globus that would actually be helpful for their day-to-day work.
And I saw that Terry wrote about designing research data storage infrastructure. I'd be very curious to hear about that too, especially the tension between on-prem and cloud. Not to put you on the
Yes.
spot, Terry, but
Yes, it was I went to that BOF. I'm from Jackson State University, which is a HBCU in Jackson, Mississippi. And as we attempt to expand our data storage, process, procedures, governance, it was interesting to hear about how a lot of the larger institutions, the R1 institutions, are handling large amounts of data moving back onto their campuses. And there was no set answer and solution. There were lots of different representatives there from Princeton and Stanford, Michigan State, and I was encouraged, scared a little bit because there is no one answer, one thing fits all. So it kind of is intimidating as to what is the baseline for doing these things. But there were great ideas that were brought up, such as tier systems, where you offer researchers a certain amount of data to start, and some schools start as large as 100 gigabytes, and some as even larger, 5 terabytes of data space, just to start their researchers off. And the BOF, I'm telling you, it could have been an entire day. I don't think everyone got a chance to get their ideas out, and I think that there was a lot more exploration that could have been done on that subject. But very interesting just to hear the amounts of, I don't want to call it controversy, but different takes on how you deal with the problems of big data and long-term storage, PIs leaving campuses, uh, um, just what to do with this data. And it was interesting to hear how solutions with people, some of which there are third-party sellers of data, and colleges have data and they introduce this third party to it, and to see what, if it's a revenue source. So those are things that I brought back to a lot of the leadership here to, just things that we need to discuss and try to get our handle on really what works best for Jackson State. And I'm interested in attending more of these types of talks. And it's one of the things that brings me here to this meeting and will bring me to further meetings to understand what is our best way of approaching data storage, data management, and so that I can help facilitate that here on campus.
Yeah, so that's the BOF that I was supposed to do but got sick.
Ah,
So that's the one that I have all the data from.
oh, nice.
Yeah,
Lively conversations in that BOF. I mean, like I said, it could have kept going. And I know it lit me up.
yeah,
Yeah.
yep. And so yes, the follow-up is joining that email list, the data storage discussion group. So
Perfect.
it's been Tobin and me trying to like kickstart the kind of organic aggregation of that.
Yeah, Deb, I asked that question because I think unless you attended the BOF and heard the conversations, you know, and the examples, I think there's utility in having sort of like use cases like Princeton did this, Jackson State did this, you know, and so that there's you know, pictures of the different types of scenarios based on, and so this becomes a resource for anybody, you know, who's now thinking about this transition. I know it's work, but this becomes something that's usable and is not so ephemeral. And it's just one of the things that came to mind, so that, you know, because we're always going to have this, and it's going to be, you know, changing as until we're all in the cloud, or we're all, you know, storing data on little mini cubes or something. So,
Yep. Well, so
yeah,
you know what you could do then, Bob. The way
don't
we're
don't
putting this,
don't get me involved. I will
I
be
you
the
brought it up.
roadblock.
You brought it up. Yeah, that's the whole idea with the listserv is like there is so much stuff that we can't have just like a few people leading it. Well, I'm hoping when people feel called to lead something, they'll just like throw it out to the email list. It's like we're trying to be very, very horizontal and self-aggregating with this. Cause it's mostly me and Tobin Magley so far. The two of us can only do so much. So. And neither of us is from the system the sysadmin side, so we don't know nitty-gritty about technology.
I mean, this is something too that we might, if it's about getting the message out there, that's, you know, there are ways that we can manage this, you know, either directly through the people network, or probably work with Daphne to help get the word out as well. So
Yeah, Deb, it seems like there's enough interest. So like I said, we can talk
Yeah,
about making that group a full-fledged interest group. It seems like it's ready for it. All right, other data relevant sessions, and especially if I missed anything, I've been trying to capture stuff in the notes.
mhm. Oh, a point I should mention for people, the presentations, where are actually, papers, uh, journal articles, conference articles, whatever. So there's the proceedings for a lot of the, um, uh, presentations. And there's a couple that pop up alphabetically that look interesting. Model for managing multi-tenant research databases. Pops right up there. That's cool. Just out of curiosity, what other conferences do people attend from this track? Like I know RDAP I talked about, they have a yearly summit that they do that I also try to attend when I can.
And to tag on that, Deb, I'd be interested, is anyone attending any like life science particular kind of data conferences or anything that are more broadly in terms of accessibility? I noticed that one thing I think is interesting is Ken posted about public data sets on AWS. Like, if there are conferences where they're talking about open access to data sets, I'd be interested in hearing more about those kind of conferences as well.
We've got RDAP written down. Are folks here going to EduCause? Tends to be a little more oriented toward enterprise IT, but has some research computing and data components that are pretty strong. I may have Brene Brown as a plenary this year.
Oh, don't get me started on the PEARC plenaries though. Oh man, that fell apart. I was so sad because I was the plenary chair and arranged all the speakers.
It didn't appear like it fell apart, so
Yeah, I was
don't
gonna
sell
say,
yourself short.
yeah, you shouldn't say that out loud because we had such great feedback about all of the plenaries that
Oh,
I
that's
think,
good.
yeah. I
And I
Yeah,
think
think we
they're,
just mean that, like, we had Amy as well as a lot of other people who didn't actually physically make it to the conference because of the CrowdStrike travel delays. And somebody else
Yeah.
who was a plenary speaker who couldn't show up due to a personal matter, but there was another option that I think
yeah.
slotted really well.
And I think on the last day, Matt crushed it, which kind of closed off all the plenaries. So, so don't sell yourself short there. I think you did a great job.
So those who weren't at the conference, what else do you want to know from those of us who were? And it could even be something we skipped over that may be obvious to some of us who've attended PERC, but things about PERC conference culture, structure. Deb, since you were plenary chair, a question I've been meaning to ask somebody that you might know the answer to. I think Amy's presentation was recorded, Amy Neeser's. Is that going to be available after the fact, or was that recorded for other reasons?
It was not recorded. Not that I know of.
Okay, I thought it had been. My mistake.
So she gave a similar plenary for the RDEP summary the year before, which is recorded.
Okay.
And I saw that one and I'm like, oh yes, we need this at PERC too. Leadership is. Yeah, here it is.
Oh, great. I was striking out with some quick Google searching.
Yeah, so similar talk, not quite the same, but you'll get the same message.
I added it to the notes. Well, it sounds like, Deb, you still got plans, you and Amy Koschoffer, the track coordinators, here to review some of the topics that seem like there's remaining discussion to be had and bringing those back to this group.
Any last thoughts? Well, if that's the case, I think we could call this a little early.
And we've got the CARC monthly welcome happening in 5 minutes. So if you want to stick around for that, stay in this room.
Yep. Cool. Thanks for coming, everyone.
Hey, Daphne.